only really going for drivers they really have faith in. Going for Shane Walsh was honestly one of the biggest gambles they've ever taken. Aside from the extremely disappointing and rather weird season of 2017, where they ended up with a lineup of Eric Swerts, who everyone's already forgotten, and Daniel Moreno, aka The Stig.
Yes, very unusual choice. I mean, presumably only picked because he does speak French, and that is a prerequisite for driving.
Indeed, yeah.
Of course. I can't think of a
those
single
years, yeah.
Anyways, we appear to have a green light for qualifying.
The first qualifying session has indeed started. We're on board with Alessandro Lucarelli now.
It'll be interesting to see what the Venturis can do. A very up and down team, occasionally qualifying right at the front. I believe Lucarelli had a front row start a few races ago in Germany, and other times has barely scraped into the race at all. So,
indeed, yes.
Complete lottery when it comes to these guys.
Lucarelli is certainly one of the quickest but most erratic drivers out there.
And again,
he
someone
scored.
who almost sort of goes into that territory of qualifying specialist.
Indeed, yeah. He scored 2 podiums so far this season in Canada and in Germany. He was doing really well. I'm not sure if he was leading in Morocco, but certainly in a front of the grid position when he stupidly put it in the wall halfway through.
And then you start to wonder why he got replaced by Bastian van Nieuwenhuizen at Kellerup and stuff. And there we go, he's got to spun the car. Fantastic. Well done, Ali.
Speak of the devil.
He can't do a spin turn correctly either. He's pointing the wrong way. My.
Oh, and he's got his front wing.
What a disaster. Oh. What are you doing, Alessandro? I think he's given up. I think he's parked the car.
No, he's still going. He's trying to spin.
Oh,
he's going backwards. He's going backwards! Oh my god, what's he doing?
Jeez,
he stopped the car.
My goodness.
Has he kept the car going? Yes, he has.
Get it pointing the right way, lad. Come
on. He's back on track.
I think he is. Jeez.
Yeah, he's back on track.
Alessandro, you wonder why you lost the Kellerup seat with driving like that. You might not even be on the grid next year.
It's certainly a very entertaining start to this season. To this session, sorry. But yeah, certainly you see why he was replaced by Bastian van Nieuwenhuizen, who is at least that little bit quicker and has the added advantage of not throwing it off the track every weekend.
Anyway, looking at the timing screens, the times really are tumbling. Wouter Lamberts had pole for all of half a second before Akira Yamamura came to me, and already that's gone. Now it's
Alberto Cara, 120.8.
Jeez, that one will be hard to beat, I think. Although John Bean is probably 8th of 8, I'd imagine at this point. It looks impressive, but it's early in the session. I imagine he will.
It's interesting to note that. Lucarelli is the first spin we've had this weekend in a dry session when pre-qualifying was held under rainy weather, and I don't believe anyone's. John Bean has got it in the pit entry.
Oh boy, that's a weird one.
What's he done?
All of those students in pre-qualifying kept it clean, got in the pits, no problem at all, and what is he? It's a qualifying session. It doesn't matter how quick you go in, John. You're already on the brink in terms of getting a contract renewal. I might just push you in the wrong direction over the place.
Yes. I just hope that hasn't really completely blocked the pit entry for all the other drivers. The marshals in this series in ARWS traditionally very good at getting cars out of the way really quickly, but hopefully that really won't affect anyone else coming into the pits.
It'll be interesting to hear his excuse for that one. That's got DC and Adelaide 95 written all over it. I wonder if we'll be complaining about overspeed from the gearbox again.
Probably will. It's one of the main excuses that drivers have, and presumably the book that they're all handed by the FIA as soon as they get their first racing license.
Yes, I can literally imagine that being a thing, a physical book of racing driver excuses. I don't know why one isn't already on sale anyway. I'd be quite interested to read that.
It's a hidden chapter. It's a downloadable content when you buy Racing Drivers for Dummies. So we've got Hansuke Shioya on our screens, currently 9th place, 1:23, about 2.5 seconds off of Alberto Cara's pole time. Has hit the wall in the pit lane.
What is going on in this qualifying session? Pouring of rain, everyone gets it absolutely fine, the track dries up and everybody loses their minds.
At least he's managed to get it back to the pit garage, but that is... He's 11th and last at the moment, not really surprising, over 3 seconds behind Kara. 123.8, could he he actually stands a chance at not making it to the race so far. I mean, of the 4 previous times this season that Jigay has made it past pre-qualifying, they have made the race on all 8 occasions. But I want... Shio has split it as well!
What the hell is going on with this pit entry? Everyone is sticking it in the fence. I'm amazed that he's not snapped the wheel off, or... it's hard to see from this angle, maybe the front wing's gone.
Indeed, it's a bit... He's not the first one to do it so far. There might actually be a problem at pit entry rather than it being a driver issue. So, before the race has even started, I am tempted to nominate pit entry just for reject of the race. But, yeah, Shioya currently in 9th place. And now we've got Terry Hawkin on our screens. Current championship leader, hasn't scored a point in the last 3 races. That's allowed Alberto Cara to come right back in the championship's battle. He's only 2 points behind. So Hawkins, certainly the revelation of the seasons, has scored 5 wins in Italy, in California, the USA, Canada, and in Scandinavia.
He isn't looking all that in the session so far, though. Very slow first sector, 6/10 off the pace, so it won't be a good lap from him.
Well, he still made it to second place.
Now, but still quite far off the pace of Alberto Cara, so it doesn't look like he'll have to be challenging for pole at least.
Well, Alberto Cara is the qualifying driver par excellence in this series. He scored the first 5 podiums of the first 5 pole positions, of the season. Has scored another 4 since then. Terry Hawkin, of course, has still managed to score 5 of his own, but Alberto Cara does take some beating to be able to get pole position.
Speaking of qualifying specialists, Naoki Shinju is also supposed to be reputed as one, though not going particularly fast at the moment.
No, well, he is... who's he driving for? I'm looking at the spotters guide right now.
Union Saver Developments.
Indeed, not one of the fastest cars out there, so I'm not really expecting him to qualify anywhere in the top 10 or anything.
He's done it on a few occasions this year, though. When the car is up to it, he can get into the top 10 without too much difficulty. It's, whether the car will play along or not.
Yeah, indeed. It's certainly quite far ahead of Marco Bizzarri. But, yeah, even though he might not be doing quite well at the moment, it's still early in the session, and there's always the second session to see
that is very, very naughty from Jesus Plaza. Hawkin trying to get past, he doesn't seek possession, he's... it's my qualify lap, I get to do what I want. It's presumably going to be his defence for this, but he's really getting in.
And of course, there aren't any penalties for blocking a driver in qualifying. As we saw when John Bean blocked about 5 drivers at the same time in pre-qualifying in Brands Hatch.
Oh, that was absolutely hilarious. And it almost worked for him. I think he was only 1 position off making the grid when it happened.
Indeed, yeah.
Valid tactic in this series, apparently.
It didn't help him to make the main session. It certainly prevented Gile from doing so.
Oh yes, I remember the team principal being absolutely furious and demanding he be banned from the session.
Indeed, yes. Unfortunately, he was not, even though he... I wasn't going to say he did anything illegal, because, as I just mentioned, it's not illegal, but certainly quite unsporting not to get out of the way in that particular occasion.
I'm not particularly sure anyone cares about sporting ethics in this series, though. You look at the driving standards, and it looks like it's just a free-for-all, really.
Well, driving standards do... well, they're a thing according to at least the organisers, who do occasionally ban drivers. Philip Nicolau was banned in Austria, Thomas Lebach was banned in Belgium.
They're getting a little more tough, in fairness. Yeah, there was a time when you could murder your teammate's mother and you still wouldn't get any sort of penalty, but...
The glory days of the feud between... I think there were about 4 drivers involved. Phoenix McAllister, Barry Morey, Sammy Jones, all involved in that particular feud. That was certainly a time to be alive for intrigue in F1 RWS.
Yes, and the sort of malarkey they go up to on the podium as well, very openly fighting with each other in public.
Indeed. That is certainly one of the iconic eras of this series. I say iconic eras, it's only in the 9th...
going to put it in the wall again. Kazama is up to no good once again. Can't manage a single weekend without a mistake, apparently.
That's 5 drivers who've been on pit entry at this point. There has to be something wrong with the track at that particular point, because... Loads of drivers have binned it. Basically, we're just taking bets as who's going to be the next person to bin it there.
That is an excellent time for Martin McFly. We mentioned,
and it's Jean-Luc Schiller is the next person to put it in the wall.
Wow, I think we're going to have to start making a tally of who hasn't put it in the fence. It's going to...
Indeed, it's currently approaching 50-50 at this point. Really fast rate.
Anyway, as I was just saying, Martin McFly with an excellent time. P5 so far in the NRE. And again, Wouter Lambright's in 9th, and the Blockbuster again, a very good time from a backmarker team. Will be interesting to see whether Greg or Pascal can... Whether that is just Lambright's or it's actually the pace of the car and Pascal can do well. Oh, so wheel to wheel between Bizzarri and Lucarelli. That was very dangerous. Lucarelli had been stuck behind him for over a lap now.
Yeah, on Marco Bizzarri, it says he's currently 23rd, but I do believe he hasn't set a time yet. Marco Bizzarri, not one of the fastest drivers or one of the most really expressive drivers on track. Really more anonymous than anything.
Yeah, and has also failed to qualify for 3 of the last 4 races on top of that.
At least he manages to make it through pit entry unscathed.
Maybe it's because he's so slow he managed it.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, you look at the sector times and he's way, way off the pace. Over a second per sector.
Fast.
It's disaster. He is actually the slowest on merit.
Yeah, Aurélien Mol in second last, only by just a bit, so... Yeah, it's certainly a very... Well, for one thing, it's a bad lap by Marco Bizzarri. He's not helped by the fact that his car isn't really the best on track. Naoki Shinjo certainly manages to do wonders with it on occasion, but Marco Bizzarri is not that kind of driver.
Now, Shiro Katayama, who we're with, one of the few drivers who has yet to set a time, so it'll be interesting to see where she is.
Well, she is currently on... Is she at the start of a lap, or is she at the start of a lap? Yeah, she's finished the first sector, 26.7, about 8 tenths behind Alberto Cara, so...
Overall, somewhat respectable. I think that's, midfield so far. I'll have to see how the rest of the lap pans out.
Indeed, it's probable that she is going to qualify the car at the very least.
Especially when you've got Marco Bizzarri, the USD, kicking around. That's one of the 2 slots basically filled.
Indeed. Well, Katayama, except for the time when Venturi failed to pre-qualify in Bathurst, she's made the grid every single time so far, so I don't think she's really in danger of failing to make the cut. 26.9 in the second sector, so she's lost about a second and a half over this gap. Second and a half, 2 seconds.
The point you're alluding to, in fact, Venturi have always made the grid when they've made it out of pre-qualifying, neither driver ever failing to make it into the race.
And there we go, 19th place, 123.1. Not setting the world alight, but yeah, that should be good enough to make the grid anyway.
It will be interesting to see who ends up as the other unlucky driver out of the race before it even begins, with Jari Kekkonen not actually making it to qualifying. That leaves one of the usually reserved spots open for some unlucky soul to drop into.
Obviously, Bizzarri is probably going to be one of them. Well, he's definitely going to be one of them, almost definitely. Currently second slowest, at least. Last recheck was Aurélien Mol, but with the second session, I do believe he's got enough time to at least put him 2 or 3 spots above. It's going to be hard to see who's going to be that person. It can't be any of the Rob Lomas racing cars, obviously, because they failed to pre-qualify.
Nicholas has just wiped himself out front. No! Everything gone. Well, he started, so he should be okay overall. But where is he going?
What's he doing? He's managed to hit one wall, keep going, and hit the one on the other side of the track.
Yeah, he's found reverse. He's not given up. He's found reverse. It's very slow.
He wants to get back to the pits. Obviously, it's a lot easier to actually get repairs done when you actually get it back under your own power, rather than have to wait until the end of the session for it to come back on the back of the
and he messes up his sprint turn. Gets a corner in the end. This season has just been a string of embarrassing gaffes for Philippe Nicolas.
Got Cara on our screen. He's lost like 2 seconds on his best time there. You saw him blocked behind. I didn't really make out who that was. I believe it was Venturi, so presumably Lucarelli.
I've got to be honest, I missed that as well.
Yeah, but he doesn't really need to be out on track. I mean, he's already He's already got at least... And Katayama spun around on pit entry. I mean...
In fairness, that is how you do a spin turn. That's the first decent spin turn I've seen all weekend.
That is a proper spin turn. She's managed to get it going without blocking anyone else. So credit to her. She's managed to keep it... not on the road. She did hit the wall, but she has managed to get it back.
Well, look, this is pretty poor from Daniel Melville. That car is capable of a very good result, good times, and way down at 17th, I'd expect better. Not good at all.
And now it's John Bean in the wall.
Keeps it going at least, but just another one racked up.
That's the end of qualifying. I don't believe John Bean has set a time, so quite a few drivers actually haven't set a time.
No,
at least 3 or 4.
No, I think he's in.
Or is he just that slow? I don't know. But
it's just that slow. It is a mecha after all. You wouldn't expect them to be
indeed.
quick.
So, taking a look at the first qualifying session, Alberto Cara currently on pole, Bastian van Nieuwenhuizen in second place, Philippe Nicolas nonetheless in third place, just ahead of Terry Hawkin, Nick Noormester, Martin McFry, Tomo Kazama, Alexei Boivodov in 8th place, not bad in the Simpson, Akira Yamamura in 9th, Wouter Lambrecht in 10th place in the Block Monster, Jean-Luc Scheller 11th, Thomas de Bock 12th, ahead of Dan Greenlaw for one. That doesn't really happen very often in qualifying. Naoki Shinjo in 13th position.
That is an utterly disastrous qualifying for Vauclair Renault. You look at the engine that they have, it's the same one that's powering the Keller up, the same one that's powering the Fusion. They are absolutely nowhere to be seen compared to those two. And it is, as you say, a very big surprise to see De Bock ahead of Greenlaw. Greenlaw usually the faster of the two drivers in qualifying, at least if not the race. So I suppose one of the drivers that will be interesting to take a look at next session will be Dan Greenlaw, to see whether there's maybe any after effects of the recovery from that incident at Belgium. He was leading but had that silly, let's face it, was quite a silly error last time out at Sao Paulo, one that didn't really make a lot of sense when you watched it. Maybe a sign that his leg hasn't quite healed properly yet.
Indeed. Well, at least he should have at least pace in Brazil. It seems to be more an issue of not quite finding a rhythm, or maybe being held up on his qualifying lap. I don't think pace is his issue rather than stamina at this point. But certainly he'll be wanting to get more representative lap time in the second session.
Speaking of pace, Jones doesn't seem to have a lot of it. 16th and 19th for Dagnall and Torrenti respectively.
Indeed, yeah, that is not very good at all. So again, like with Greenlaw, they might have been blocked, or they just haven't been able to find pace in that car this weekend. But if you look at the very back, Marco Bizzari was one of the drivers who didn't make the cut, at least provisionally. I believe Gregor Pascal was the other one.
Yeah, and Gregor Pascal was quite far off the back of everyone else. I said it would be a bit of a toss-up whether he'd actually make the most of that car or not. And to be slower than Bizzari by that much is quite a surprise.
He had to have a problem on that lap, presumably, and not be able to set another one because...
based on where Lambrecht was, at least,
indeed,
yeah.
Indeed, yeah. The Lambrecht is a very good qualifier, but the Block Monster really is not that slow. So he should be able to qualify, assuming he manages to get a decent lap time in this time around. If you look at Block Monster's results so far, they have failed to qualify on occasion, 3 times in fact, but aside from that, they've regularly made the grid. Last time they failed to qualify was in Monaco. So
I do wonder if it's that second car that could be the issue. It's almost strange. You look at the lineup they had earlier in their season, Lambrecht and Steele. Now, Steele, pretty decent driver, and yet failed to qualify, even though he was in the main qualifying session on, I believe, 3 different occasions.
2 occasions. In Canada and Great Britain.
So I imagine the third one was Gregor Pascal then?
Yes, indeed, in Monaco, yeah.
Oh, that's not a good sign for them at all then.
Indeed. So either Lambrecht is just that good a qualifier, or really there's just a problem with that second car.
Could really be either. You look at his form in F2, and Lambrecht really was an amazing qualifier. I believe he actually won a race in Monaco one time.
By sheer virtue of keeping everyone behind. There is a reason he's nicknamed the Great Wall of Belgium. But yeah, unfortunately, even though he is one of the best qualifiers of anyone, presumably in motorsport at any, like in any motorsport series currently, he's really not a good race driver. If you take a look at what he's done previously, so he's 28 years old, born in the Netherlands actually, in Maastricht. Competed at first in AutoGP and Super League Formula. He won the Indy 100 when that race was run, the Formula 2 exhibition race in 2013. He scored 12 points with Gillet in Formula 2 in 2014. I do believe that was because pole was something that gave you 1 point. He only managed a top finish of 6th position. But ever since he's been in F1 ARWS, he has scored, I do believe, like at least 4 poles. I really should read my notes better, but he scored 4 poles last year with Simpson and scored 5 points from it. So that is shockingly bad conversion, but it does go to show how bad a race driver he is and how good a qualifier he is.
Almost like a reverse Markelov.
Indeed. So on our screen, Sebastian van Nieuwenhuizen, who's currently topping the session with a 121.653.
And also on a personal best in the first sector so far, shaving off half a second from his best time thus far. Let's see what he can do in the second sector.
Indeed. I don't think he's going to be able to beat Alberto Cara's current pole time, but certainly, given that he's already in second place, at least from the first session, he might be able to challenge for pole position, but I heavily doubt it.
And again, pointing out, just we were talking about at the end of the last session, Akira Yamamura doing very well in the Yamaha
122.5, that's a very good time, currently in 5th place. He does improve to 121.1, which is about 4/10 off of what Cara did in the first session, so...
He's looking reasonably solid for a top 3 start so far, no doubt.
Indeed.
But looks like, Cara has been the best qualifier all season, so no surprise to see him there.
But yeah, he's been a brilliant qualifier all throughout his career, even in Formula 2, F2 RWRS. He was, in 2014, he is the only driver who scored more pole positions than Lambrecht. He actually scored like 7 that season. So he's definitely one of the best qualifiers in the world, alongside Lambrecht and the likes of McFry and Fleet.
Wow, Fleet, perhaps once upon a time a reasonable qualifier,
indeed,
has got a bit downhill of late, and no surprise to see him out of the sport altogether.
I do believe that Fleet was probably flattered by that car in 2013, the car that was famous for its monstrous one-lap pace and equally as famous for never ever finishing a race.
No, a fantastic machine in terms of pyrotechnics, not so much in terms of reliability.
Indeed. If I just go back in time and take a look.
Oh, it appears that
results.
Greenlaw has finally made up for the fact he was absolutely nowhere in Q1. He is currently 3rd. I can't see his time, but looking at the split, it's probably not that bad. It's probably enough to put him a bit higher than 12th. Still a bit slower than Toma Kazama, who's sort of the benchmark for the bottom of the points places.
And Yamamura's been in on pit entry as well.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
And now Marco Bizzarri as well!
Well, that makes the statement I was about to make completely redundant. I was about to say it seems to be the fast drivers who keep rushing into that,
Yes.
but Bizzarri anything but.
Indeed. But yeah, looking back at that 2013 season, the Foxdale car scored 12 pole positions out of 16, which just goes to show how quick that car was in the hands of the likes of Ben Fleet and Douglas Mann, and not really drivers known for setting the world on fire when they were in the sport. That car only really made the finish once, and that was a race victory.
Yeah.
So
it was almost as if they forgot to swap the qualifying engine out for the race one every weekend.
indeed, yeah, that one win for Douglas Mann really probably the highlight of Douglas Mann's career. The only driver from the Isle of Man, at least, to race under that flag. So no, he did actually win one more race in France the next year. Largely retired from the sport at the end of last season, but indeed, even though he got quite a few good results, almost exclusively driving for the team owned by himself and his sister Pippa, not really had the reputation that Pippa did. Certainly living in her shadow for most of his career.
Yeah, and of course the nepotism always helps in terms of getting and keeping a right Douglas man plugged away for longer than perhaps he should have, really.
Indeed, yeah.
Got into a steep decline in the last year or two when he was racing. Even the principal sort of admitted he's only here to try and reach that. Oh, what the? That is an enormous accident!
That is oh, God. Oh,
I really hope
no.
he gets a replay of that, because that was the biggest accident I've seen in a qualifying session before. One car flying, I think it was a block monster, can't tell whether it was...
It could have been. Certainly Shioya is out of the session.
One of the
Katayama spun round.
Still going by the looks of it, though. As
yeah, she does
the
make
barriers reversed out, and...
Sort of manages to get a spin turn, but...
I'm pretty sure that was a dark green car I saw flying.
Martin McFry's off.
McFry has lost the front wing.
What is happening in this session? This is all live.
I'm pretty sure this is turn 1 that people keep making mistakes at. I do also seem to recall quite a few cars going off at that same turn in the race last year, so sort of known as a hazard spot. But this is starting to go a little bit mental as people chase the last few attempts and what is their final chance to make a difference.
Great camera angle looking at the helmet of Diego Alvarez Torrente. Not really talked about him much so far. Currently in 10th position.
Perhaps because there's not really much to talk about.
There isn't really much to say about him, yeah. He's certainly been a decent driver ever since he's managed to enter the sport. He's scored 2 podiums so far this season, but not really a driver who likes to have stories get put out about him. Not one of the more successful drivers. He did drive quite well in 2017, scored 2 race victories in his first season.
And also really took the world by surprise when he won that F2 title back in 2016.
Indeed, yeah.
A lot of people saw that coming.
Indeed, when he Gregor Pascal. Oh, no, that's quite big.
That is huge, and that is surely the end of... Oh, he's made it to 21st. Oh, there's a chance he might have made that in that case.
He might actually make the grid with this.
Certainly, that's it. If enough people improve, he's finished. But that's going to be very, very close. Clearly, he's pushing as far as he possibly can to try and make sure he's in, and just lost control of it.
But to get back to Torrente, whose rear wing we just saw, in 2015, he actually was driving in rejected LFS, that short-lived series, where he finished only in 10th. Only got a one-off appearance in F2 ARWS with Dafasco Racing in the United States, and he failed to pre-qualify. And he repeated that at the start of 2016, actually, driving for Dafasco. Then suddenly he finished 2nd in Great Britain. No one quite knows how he managed that, but 2 races later he was driving for Poor, and managed to score another 4 podiums and eventually win the title.
Oh dearie me, yet another driver into the wall. But Van Rakens continues for now. This is starting to get quite ridiculous, and really everyone's starting to lose their heads ever so slightly. It's a much higher mistake rate than we saw in the first session. Everyone, maybe just the pressure getting to them now.
Well, at the very least, just tagging the wall there isn't... Speaking of which, Daniel Melville does it. But losing it there and only tagging the wall, at most, the drivers have just lost their front wing there. So given they're going back into the pit, they're not really losing much, but still, it's not going to reflect very well on the quality of driving in this series.
No, and I am actually not really looking forward to the race because of the mistake rate we're seeing at turn 1. You get the feeling it's going to be a race where the winner is going to be completely unpredictable.
So far, we've got Shinjo in 6th place, Yamamura in 7th, so quite good performances by the both of them so far.
And again, Shinjo is doing exactly what I expected. If the car wants to play ball with him, he can do these kind of miracles in qualifying. So clearly, Pizzari performing well below the quality of that car, even if it is...
As he always does, really.
Yes, in fairness, you look at his time at, Revolution, and never really quite had the measure of Andrei Kremnički, who, as we saw from his performance at Melrose Racing Team as a sub earlier this season, isn't all that either. So if you can't match him, really not much to talk about in terms of ability.
No, really, not really very much going on the at least on the in terms of interesting drivers at Revolution before the end of their stint in the sport. At least not this season. Kremnitsky and Bidzari not being the most talkative bunch, but yeah, Revolution. Sad to see them go, really. Mostly a vehicle for Hagane Shizuka to continue his career. Certainly one of the more popular drivers in the sport. But
Yeah, and as soon as he retired, the team just went into a decline it couldn't recover from.
indeed, well, even before he retired, the team was already confined to pre-qualifying and never making it out of it. They only really had that resurgence in 2017, and at least in 2018 as well. They scored a point earlier this season. But even before Hagane Shizuka retired from the sport, the team wasn't going very well at all.
And in fairness, they never really seemed to have the rub of the green either. I do recall back in 2017 at the Monaco Grand Prix, Marco Bizzarri was as high as third at one point, looking like he might finish on the podium, and alas, transmission failure put paid to that, and weren't heard from in that position ever again.
Indeed. Well, that was the season they scored that fifth place, which turned out to be their last top 5 finish in the North Sea Grand Prix, and I believe that was Zandvoort, when it was Andrei Kramnitsky actually who took that 5th position.
That is a good lap actually from Nick Narmester.
Indeed, 121.3, third position. That is quite good. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to hold on to that third, combining the times with the 2 sessions, but certainly that should be good enough for a top 5.
Maybe top 6, depends what Kazama she's currently 5th. And yeah, certainly top 6, first 3 rows by the looks of it. He's starting to finally respond to the challenge of his new teammate Bastian van Nieuwenhuizen, who dominated him to the point of almost submission in the first few rounds, where Bastian has been winning races pretty consistently. Meanwhile, Nermester struggling to even get on the scoreboard at all. You saw back straight after the change, you had 12th place and 8th place, and only now is he starting to rise to the challenge to compete for podiums again.
Indeed. So we're on board with Shane Walsh, currently in 22nd position. And now we're with Jean-Luc Schiller instead, who is at 11th, should easily make the grid, as he always does, really. But really, Simpson not being that much on the pace this season, at least not as much as they were in the past. They scored? Yeah, they actually have scored regular points, at least, in that 2nd place for Schiller in Australia, but they have done a lot better in the past, I do believe.
I don't seem to recall them having particularly good... To be fair, where they are now is a big improvement from where they started back in their debut season, when they had that rather mediocre lineup of Seidel, Faisal and Mitchell Macklin, and basically couldn't even make it into a race. So it's still something of a high point, even if they are only managing to score points consistently rather than podiums.
That's Terry Hawkin, who has just set the fastest time, 120.474, which is, well, that's provisional pole right there. And Nick Nermus is in the wall.
But yeah, that had that. If my memory serves correct, that has knocked Carroll off the top perch by a couple of tenths.
Yeah, but I think that's about 3 tenths faster than Kara's time in the first session. So unless Kara can actually pull out one of the best times, he probably won't. There's only 1 minute left. So I do believe that Terry Hawkin has just secured pole position. So that is good.
By the looks of it, then you're going to have the 3 of the main title contenders, well, 2 main title contenders and a long shot in the top 3 places. Philippe Nicola, I'm not sure he's really in this. If I remember correctly, he's way down in 8th or 9th.
Yeah, so I don't think he's not going to be really a factor in this session. But his time in the first session, he was in 3rd place. I do think that's going to put him at least in the top 6 or 7.
He was 3rd, so my memory's just failing me. That's in the qualifying. Let's see what the aggregate times are.
Waiting for this with semi-bated breath. We do know who's having pole position. It's going to be Terry Hawkin. But
With Cara alongside, of course.
Of course, yes. So it's really a question of who's going to be third. Presumably Bastien van Nieuwenhuizen. In fourth place, I think it's still going to be Philippe Nicolas. I'm not really sure. I didn't memorize the times from the first session, but he is certainly odds-on candidate for that fourth position on the grid.
Yeah, it's probably the right guess with you when you had the three we've mentioned in the top four for that second session as well. Anyway, will also be interesting to see what happened at the other end of the grid. Pretty sure that Pizzara is one of the two.
Pizzara is probably going to fail to qualify. Gregor Pascal, of course, he crashed out in the second session, having not really set a good time in the first. He did set a representative time in the second session, but was he passed by other drivers? That's going to be what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this session overall, even though Hawken does seem to have taken pole overall, seems to have been a slightly slower session. It may be that even though he's 21st in this session, it's still not enough to get him across the line. Just waiting now for the times to appear any day now.
Hopefully by the end of this year, that should be great. When we say we're waiting for the TV directors to show to us, we're really waiting for one man behind his computer in Spain to just give us really what we need to actually do our jobs. But certainly Daniel Prieto not being the most reliable person in terms of actually getting anything done on time.
You said it, not me.
Yep. I'm not even sure he's actually listening to this, but...
no, of course he won't be.
And we're still waiting for the lap times here in Buenos Aires for the Argentinian ARWS Grand Prix of 2018. So with Terry Hawken on pole ahead of Cara, that is the first two spots in the championship. So if they were to finish the way they start, Hawken would now have a 6-point lead in the championship. But if things go like they did in the previous races, Hawken might not finish this race either. So that would give Cara a prime opportunity to take the advantage going into the final two rounds of the season in Japan and China.
Actually, the gap would be slightly smaller at 5 points rather than 6. Remember?
Indeed, yes. I keep forgetting.
A very strange 7 points per second.
Indeed. That's the system that has changed relatively recently. I'm not aware if it was in use last season. Let me take a look.
Believe it might have been last year, and that's...
It was implemented last year, I do believe, so still taking a while to get used to it, but indeed, it would be a 5-point gap rather than 6, were Hawken to win ahead of Alberto Cara here in Buenos Aires. And of course, were he to retire, it would still be a prime opportunity for Cara to take the advantage in the championship. All he'd have to do would be finishing the top 4 really to take the championship lead. Finishing 5th wouldn't be good enough as he'd still be behind on countback, but that it's really not that much of an issue with 2 races to go before the end of the championship, really, to see how things would finish on countback. Terry Hawken, all likelihood, is going to have the most race wins of anyone this season. He's got 5. No one else has more than 3. Cara and Van Nieuwenhuizen both have 3. Philippe Nicolas has 2. Mark Dagnall, Dan Greenwolf, the other 2 drivers with 1 race victory. And we have the times. So Hawken on pole ahead of Cara and Van Nieuwenhuizen. Philippe Nicolas is in 4th position. Nick Nomesa is going to be starting from 5th place. Quite a good job, actually. Tomek Kazama is going to be 6th in the other fusion. Martin McFry 7th. Alexei Boivolov 8th. Dan Greenlaw 9th, so he did manage to get a good lap time in. Akira Yamamura will be starting in the top 10. Wouter Lambrecht 11th in the Block Monster. Naoki Shinjo 12th. Jean-Luc Sugar 13th. Thomas de Bock in 14th position, which even by his standards is quite bad.
Yes, and in fairness, even if he had qualified ever so slightly higher, he's still in a very bad position, as is pretty much everyone who's qualified behind Martin McFry. We've seen him in this position before in this car. He's always slow to start. He's always a bit unpredictable. He's thrown it in the fence early on a few times and occasionally taken people with him. So everyone behind him on the next following rows will have to be very, very astute, very cautious, and mind what they're doing.
Especially the fact that Martin McFry qualified without even setting a single time in the second session. He qualified purely off the back of his time in session 1, 121.892, and he's managed to put the car in 7th place, the Numenen, with Danny Van Rakens not even in the top half of the field.
Yes, one might suggest that was the team maybe taking a more cautious approach, telling him not to go out because they don't really feel like fixing his car in a hurry between qualifying and the race.
Well, actually, he did go out and crashed.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, that did happen. Yes.
Oh yes.
It's not that he didn't go out; he just
dear
didn't
me.
set the time because he crashed before he actually could set the time.
Typical McFry. They
Indeed.
really should have held him back in that case. They really should have.
So what's not it's not surprising that he crashed. It is surprising that he still managed to get 7th place off of just that first session.
And of course, the interesting wager will be how many laps will he last before he throws it in the fence. Last time he raced, I think it was only 2 he lasted before he ended up in a wall and out of the race. I think he got sacked after the Brands Hatch race. I don't think he made any appearances after that.
Martin McFry, his last race was actually in Austria. His last
right.
race this season.
I don't seem to recall what he did in that particular race, but it does seem
He
that
probably-
he retired
he-
from it as well.
He must have done something. That's usually how his race goes. He does something stupid and then retires. That said, he did finish 3 races this season and was classified in 4th, although he retired, presumably from an accident.
So,
Yeah, not one of the drivers with the biggest gift of spatial awareness that we have on our grids.
Well, see, as we're waiting now for the Spanish editor to show us the bottom half of the grid, I could honestly do with a little bit of a break. I'm starving. So if you don't mind, I'll be back in just a couple of minutes to wrap things up here and then rejoin you for the race.
That's not an issue. I'll be covering the second half of the grid, after which I will be myself taking a bit of a break to go get some water and maybe a snack or two. So while we're still waiting for the second half of the standings, taking a look at it again, so obviously the Fusions in 1st and 6th positions, the Melrose cars 2nd and 4th, Bastian van Nieuwenhuizen, and in 3rd place, Nick Neumeister in 5th. So those are the 2 drivers for Kellerup. So the 3 best teams in the top 6 cars, not really that much competition there. Martin McFry still relatively close to Kazama in 7th place. Alexei Boivolov and Jean-Luc Scherer, the teammates at Simpson, in 8th and 13th. Not a bad performance by them. Dan Greenlaw and Thomas de Bock in the Voglers in 9th and 14th. Again, not a very good performance by Vogler this weekend. Akira Yamamura is in 10th place in the Yamaha. His teammate Daniel Melville not in the top half. Walter Lambrecht 11th in the Block Monster. Still wondering how his teammate Gregor Pascal did and whether or not he will make the race. Naoki Shinjo is in 12th position, so he did not in fact make the top 10. In the USD, Jari Kekkonen nowhere to be seen. And that really caps the top half of the field. We're just waiting at this point for the Spanish TV director to show us the second half of the standing, and more importantly, which 2 drivers will not make the grid. Marco Bizzarri is almost certainly going to be one of them. Gregor Pascal, odds-on favourite really to be the second one, considering he didn't manage to set a clear lap time in session 1 and crashed in session 2, and here we go. Mark Dagnall is in 15th position. Really bad session by Jones, his teammate Torrente only 19th. Jesus Plaza 16th in the Mecca. That's actually quite a good job. His teammate John Bean 25th. Danny Van Rakens only 17th. Daniel Melville is 18th. Daniel Martins 20th in the aero racing. His teammate Shioya 23rd. Shinobu Katayama is 21st for Venturi. Her teammate Lucarelli just behind her in 22nd place. Shane Walsh and Aurélien Moll qualified both Chiles in 24th and 26th. Good result for them considering they failed to pre-qualify altogether the last time around in Brazil. And the 2 drivers who failed to qualify, as we predicted, Marco Bizzarri in 27th place, Gregor Pascal in 28th place. Bizzarri actually not that far off Aurélien Moll. Only 36 thousandths of a second. So really not a good performance by Mole. Really lucky to make the grid there. I shall now take a very short break before the race itself can start. I will be right back with my colleague Alistair Lindsay for the race itself. See you then.